it could be really crazy conditions. Now, this is how they finished in the race yesterday. Cameron Peterson, who won, is on pole, then Schultz and Baz.
Yep, and then we have Ashton Yates, Jake Lewis, and yes, Danny Estlick on the outside of row 2 and 6. David Anthony, Hector Barber, and Josh Herron are going to be in row 3. Bobby Fong, Gagne, and Gilbert coming from row number 4. Then we're going to have Ferris, Kyle Wyman, Giannato, Cam Sook, Danilo Lewis, and Corey Alexander on the outside of row 6. Travis Wyman, Aguilar, and Perk. So there's going to be a number of guys trying to get to the front here, Greg. They're coming from a little bit further back on the grid than what we're normally seeing. You heard Schultz pre-race say the conditions are way better than yesterday, and that is simply because it's not lashing rain. So the track is very, very wet, but we don't have that big onslaught of storm like we had yesterday at the start of the race.
A couple riders here chomping at the bit. No doubt Loris Baz, who is not 100%. His throttle hand is hurting his wrist area, as well as Jake Gagne is chomping at the bit, trying to come from 11th spot and get his 17th win of the season. Clutches are out. We're away racing. Cameron Peterson with a good launch, but position goes to Matthew Schultz up the inside, bending it into turn number 1. He's going to run out of racetrack right there. You definitely want to stay away from those paint lines. So Cam Peterson, M4 X-Star Suzuki, will lead us over Westby Racing's Matthew Schultz, and right there, Loris Baz with a good start on the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati New York Panigale.
Yeah, we know these three all have a little bit of history, so I think that with these conditions, we'll see how they handle as far as the close racing goes and all that. We want to see good, tight racing. Jake Lewis back there does have 4th. Gagne already up to 5th. You see Barber making a move under Ashton Yates there for that 5th spot. Kyle Wyman, what a start he has had, Greg, to come from the back of the grid all the way up to 6th place already. So the Panera-bred Ducati is got himself in a good spot early.
Lead change as Matthew Schultz takes over the point over Cameron Peterson. So Schultz trying to set sail. And Jay, talking to Loris Baz, who's in 3rd place, about his day yesterday. Keep in mind, he only did a couple of laps on Friday. Then he crashed. He missed qualifying. So they don't have a dry setup, period. And so he needs these conditions for the Ducati. The only time he really has learned Barber Motorsports Park was in the race yesterday.
Yeah, well, he did 4 laps, like you say, Friday morning was all he got in. So he was learning the track as he was rolling around yesterday. You heard him post-race say he didn't even know he finished 3rd. He was still learning the racetrack as he went. So he had yesterday morning. And the hardest thing right now for Loris is, like you alluded to earlier, he's not 100%. He tipped off right out of this corner on Friday and kind of looked like he got high-sided off the inside of the bike, ended up on the outside of this corner here on the entry. So it was very odd. And you can see Gagne now is closing the gap to these front 3 guys as they come across. Schultz, Peterson, Baz, and Gagne, your 4 leaders.
And yesterday, there were a lot of crashes, no question, but there was also a huge learning curve for all these teams. It had been quite a while since MotoAmerica has had a race in the rain like that. And so these teams were learning, as were the riders, in terms of limits. But the one thing in talking to all these Hono Superbike riders, everyone was saying that this track provides tremendous grip in the rain. It was just those puddles of standing water that was really causing the biggest problem yesterday. Loris Baz a little wide coming out of turn number 6.
Cam got in there just a little bit deep, it looked like, and had to kind of close his line on the way in and keep the bike upright for longer to slow the motorcycle down. That's why you see that gap now, tiny one as it is, between him and Schultz. He just got in there a little bit deep, couldn't turn the bike, so he had to stand the bike upright, use a little bit more brake while the bike was up and down to get the thing slowed down, and that's what he did. These 2 guys raced so close yesterday, Cam Peterson and Matthew Schultz. They went back and forth. The track was very raceable. And also, Greg, if it gets just a little bit of a breeze, with the undulation here at Barber, the track does get a dry line pretty quickly. Or drier line.
Drier line, at this point. Yeah, and of course, no sunshine at the moment and high humidity, with it probably being about 99%. Just waiting to rain at some point is not going to really dry this track out anytime soon. However, you know, this is going to be 15 laps to go, and we're going to be keeping an eye on a dry line. Hannah?
Well, in talking to Schultz, he said yesterday was really the first time racing on the softer package that they had from the start of 2020. Not a lot of time to set things up prior to this weekend, as you mentioned. From yesterday, just some small chassis changes. They softened the torque and changed TC target slightly, but overall he was pretty happy with the bike's performance in the wet. You know, we were talking about lines, and he knows he needs to choose the right lines that'll maximize time, but also safety. Obviously, there's not as much pulling on the track today, but he wants to keep it upright, and he thinks he can go for a win. He knows he has a good pace in these mixed conditions as well.
Yeah, and that's really, you know, an important thing is what information he brought back for the team. A challenge for second place as Baz goes down the inside of Cameron Peterson on the brakes into Charlotte's Web, turn number 5. So now Baz is going to try to set sail after Schultz.
That move came from a long way back. Baz was very defiant on where he wanted to put that Ducati, Greg, and got it up underneath Cam Peterson. You can see Cam falling back just a little bit. You almost wonder if there was any changes made to try to make the bike a little bit more suitable for him, because I would expect Cam to be right there up at the front as he's hooking it back up underneath Baz as they come out of that museum corner, not quite able to make it. But with the track drying as well, the speeds will be a little quicker. Look at Cam. He's having a look as they get ready to go down into this very tricky little turn 12-13 section. Not quite close enough there. But Baz made that move from a long way back, so he's starting to really get accustomed with this place.
14.5 laps to go in this race. Loris Baz in second place. We're looking at him right now on that Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati New York Panigale V4R. Direct support from the factory in Bologna and plenty of information available for them in terms of how to set up this Ducati in rain conditions. Of course, the difference is that no information until yesterday was provided for Dunlop tires. Here comes Cameron Peterson. He's trying to get a good drive and outbrake Loris Baz. As Baz was telling me too, Jason, that was the first time on Dunlop reins for him. He's been on a variety of tires in the course of his career, and he said that he was so pleased with the amount of grip that the Dunlop tires provided him. It's just a matter of him getting more used to the feel, especially on the front.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you think he's trying to still learn this place. You know, in the dry, he only got 4 laps, like we said. He's learning it as he goes and going as fast as he is in the wet. So you can see here now Schultz is just disappearing. He was 1.5 seconds quicker than that of Baz on the last lap. And right now, Baz is trying his best to get a little bit further away from Cam Peterson. Gagne all the while kind of sitting there watching what's going on. But it looked like there's some distinct places where, again, Cam is really, really good, and he draws back up on the back of that Ducati. Then there's other places where he doesn't quite have the confidence to go with Baz. But you can see Schultz is disappearing off into the distance.
And Jason, yesterday talking to Loris Baz, he said he still feels sore all over, but the bike, he feels no worse on the bike than he felt yesterday. So, I mean, obviously it's not getting any worse, which is important. The front row start definitely made his life a lot easier. He was really happy about not having to start last today. He would prefer full rain over these mixed conditions, but he knows he'll still have the pace to try to make it all the way to the end. As far as bike setup goes, some small changes in warm-up. Still working on some small things, but the bike felt fast yesterday. Ultimately, he just wants to be calm and be patient until the end of this race.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Hannah. And I'm sure they're making adjustments every time out just because it's so new. So, and as far as the injuries go, sometimes it's easier to ride a bike, Greg, than it is to just stand around or walk around. And some of the injuries he has, once he gets out there right now, he just knows he's got to do his job, get through these races, get through these laps. He's got 2 of them today. And like you can see this dry line. See how quickly it's starting to get dry now as they exit that turn 3 area. So that'll also put different forces on his injuries. Sometimes when we ride in the wet, the thing that we have to do the thing that's most taxing is just the mental side of it. Look how good he is getting down in there. Although he runs a little bit wide, he'll be able to square that up. But he gains a lot of time going down into that Charlotte's Web area, does Baz.
Loris Baz trying to figure out how to reel in Matthew Schultz, who is 4.5 seconds ahead of him at the moment. Gagne put on a great run at the beginning, Jason. You got to just think for the Fresh and Lean Attack Performance Yamaha, he obviously doesn't feel like he's got the speed to get by these 2 riders and go after the leader, at least not right now. But for Jake Gagne, that 17th win is just hanging out there. But,
it is.
You know, maybe this is a strategy of Gagne. Of course he wants to win the race, but he also knows that this race result is going to set the grid for the next race. So if he can finish in 4th, he's going to start from row number 2 and then give it another go. Plus, get all this information on what the track's doing. Because the forecast for this afternoon's race, the final race of the season, rain.
Yeah, and you know, the consecutive laps led that Gagne had was so impressive, and he was doing it again yesterday. He wasn't going to let anybody lead, and then he had a small slide off like we saw. But when you think about it, this is all new territory for Jake Gagne. He hasn't been behind very many people as they are coming up on Heron. Heron must have started on slicks. Heron's got is he out there on slicks?
You can even see it, yeah.
So you could tell he's on slicks. I was thinking, why are we catching up to Heron so early? But yeah, that's going to be a kind of a mistake here because it's just too wet early. You're going to give up way too much track position. But
I know the idea,
man, how
though.
brave. How brave.
Absolutely.
I mean, for Josh Heron to be doing that right now, pretty brave to be sticking it out there. If it's not raining, a lot of times these guys will start to think, and they know how quickly this place dries up. But right now, it's just still a little bit too wet.
So those are the riders in front, 100% slicks. You can see, listen, he's already done a few laps, and you still have that line brave. On it.
Yeah, you got to give him credit. You know, you got to take chances like that sometimes. At the end of the season, if it starts to get a little bit drier, you would hope that by the time you see maybe 8 laps to go, that the track has a distinct dry line. The only problem with that, Greg, is that it's sometimes if the dry line starts to appear, as you can see, Gagne was able to get past Cam Peterson. Cam Peterson was underneath Heron down in turn 1 and almost just ran up alongside Heron, but it allowed Gagne to get through. But even when the track starts to get that dry line, you have to go off that dry line to pass, and on slicks that can be difficult too.
Now look, we've been coming here since 2003, Jason, and when there's a bit of a breeze, a bit windy, this track dries 100%. Really quickly. Hannah's told us that it's not breezy at all down there. So the risk that Heron was taking by putting those slicks on, if all of a sudden the wind picked up, Heron would have looked like a hero.
He would have.
Because with enough time left, he can reel in some people like in chunks of 10 seconds at a time with slicks on a dry track versus these softer rain tires. You
can still see how much water is coming up off the tires, though. Even with these 3 going down that front straightaway, you can see that there's still a fair amount of water on the ground. And so, for Josh, it was a good gamble. It was a good try. And like you said, if it had been a little bit breezy, but even through here, you can see it starting to dry. You can see the riders getting a little bit more confident, leaning the bikes over. So there'll be places where he'll be fine, but the places where it isn't will be very sketchy.
And with the line starting to dry and the track conditions getting better and better, even with the full Dunlop rain tires we have on there, we're seeing lap times dropping. Matthew Skoltz just came by the stripe. Fastest lap of the race now at a 38.1, 38.7s for Baz and Gagne.
And if you watch what Baz does there, he gets into Charlotte's Web very early. That's going to allow him to run the bike out a little bit. There is some water out there, so he's going to be able to cool the tires off towards, I'd say probably in the next 4 or 5 laps. If you start to see a distinct dry line, most of these guys will start to look for that little bit of moisture to try to get these tires a little bit cooled off. And we're starting to see that dry line more and more as they go around. Even down through here, you'll start to see the color of the pavement start to change. I talked to Matthew Skoltz last night. He was in a great mood, surprisingly. And one of the things that we talked about on the telecast yesterday is when it gets so wet, Greg, sometimes you can't tell what's an actual puddle to what is just wet. And it's exactly what he said happened. He says, Jay, that the hardest part was couldn't really see the puddles. You could feel them underneath you, but you couldn't really see them. But you can see the concentration in his eyes today. He wants to go back out, get that victory for Westby.
But to add to that too, Jason, the one thing about those conditions that you have to pile on top of everything else is the fact that you don't have the accuracy with your motorcycle as you do in the dry. So it's not like you can go, okay, I know that these are puddles here, these are deep puddles here, and I'm going to put it on the same line every single time. A lot of it is trying to adjust your speed. And so next thing you know, you find yourself, like he did yesterday, Matthew Skoltz, out wide into a deeper puddle than he's been in, and then he hit the deck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we talked about even off throttle, how much the rear tire was still spinning. And he was talking about how the bike was backing in spots simply because there was just no grip. The bike was still just rolling around. The rear wheel was just rolling around and creating it to where the bike was really uncomfortable underneath him. But, man, this bike looks so good right now. Just watching him ride around here looks very simple for him. And he has opened up 6.2 seconds, Greg. Still the fastest rider on the track, 38.2 that last time by. The other guys are all in the 38s as well. But with a gap of almost 7 seconds, Matthew will be able to manage that. And he's getting a really good look today. There's not as many puddles. He's going to be able to visualize a lot more of where he wants his motorcycle to go. Like you say, in the dry, we can do that. And he's starting to see that now.
Matthew Skoltz, legendary for a 2017 win here at Barber Motorsports Park when we had Superbikes and Stock Thousands racing at the exact same time on the track. And in conditions similar to this, Matthew Skoltz was able to take a win in the Superbike class on a Stock 1000. Jason, we often see taller riders really just enjoy riding in the rain, or fast riders, the tall ones. Do you think that being tall has anything to do with being a good rain rider.
Well, I'm sure there's been some guys that aren't as tall that would tell me that they love riding in the rain, but being a little bit taller allows you to get that knee on the ground a little bit sooner, feel for that pavement a little bit earlier. You can use your size to your advantage, sometimes a little bit better, a little bit easier. It's one of the biggest reasons why these guys will use rain pucks. A lot of people will use rain pucks, and that the puck will be a little bit thicker so that you'll be able to, if you look at Gagne even here, he's got a little bit thicker knee pucks, and what that allows him to do is get that knee on the ground and get that confidence a little bit more. You almost feel like it can start to pivot around the motorcycle more. But I do agree, even some of the taller guys, I think, do feel like it's a bit of an advantage.
And Jason, as Gagne is looking to reel in the likes of Loris Baz, I talked to him yesterday. There's been so much conversation about this win streak that he had going on and all these different records. And to be honest, Jake said he's not really keeping track of any of that. He just wants to go out and enjoy this. The championship title has been won. He's so happy to have achieved that. Anything else after that, he said, is just kind of like the cherry on top. It's an extra bonus. As far as today's races go, he just wants to do a good job. He wants to go out there and do what he knows how to do, and he's doing exactly that right now.
Yeah, and he is doing well. And Jason, we were talking about this after the race was over yesterday. When's the last time this season we saw no Fresh and Lean Attack Performance Yamaha on the podium?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
We almost have to think, even going into last year and the years prior, when was the last time we haven't seen a bike from that stable up on the podium, like you say? So I agree. It was very odd, and but for Jake right now, these conditions, he's won, like Hannah said, he's won the championship. The last thing you want to do is do anything silly at the last race of the season, ding yourself up. He's had a tremendous year, and these conditions are something that our riders in America don't get to see very often. So, and some of the tracks that we go to are different as far as level of grips. Barber, as we can see here, level of grip looks really, really nice. And but yesterday it was just, there was so much standing water. That's why we saw so many incidents.
And even with Jake Gagne talking about his year that he spent in World Superbike, that time he never actually raced in a wet race in World Superbike. So as far as Jake Gagne is concerned, he thinks the last time he raced in the rain was that 2017 race.
Yeah. Yep. Again, you see the two differences in lines there between Baz and Gagne's. Baz starts to pull away a little bit here from Gagne, 38.7. Last lap through for Loris Baz, 39 flat. So there wasn't much in it, but on this lap here, that first couple sectors, he's already pulled out just a little bit away from Gagne. And you can see Cam Peterson's just dropped back a little bit further. Cam circulating in the high 39s. Jake Lewis, shout out to him real quick, still running in that top 5, a Superbike Cup competitor.
So here we are. We have 7.5 laps to go. Matthew Schultz 6 seconds ahead of Loris Baz, who chipped away a little bit at Schultz's lead last time by, took a second back. Then you have Gagne in third, Cameron Peterson in fourth, Jake Lewis, the first of our Stock 1000 competitors, and your newly crowned Superbike Cup champion in 5th place over Ashton Yates, Kyle Wyman in 7th, then Bobby Fong, Hector Barbera, Corey Alexander, Gilbert Anthony, Travis Wyman, Giannato, and Jason Aguilar in his return to racing this season on a Superbike in 15th place.
Good look at Jake Gagne coming onto the front straightaway. Let's see if he's able to match the time of Baz. Baz that time again, 38.6. So almost another half second Baz was able to pull away. But Gagne will keep charging, Greg. He's not going to obviously give this up without giving it a bit of a fight and trying to get back up on the back of Baz on that Ducati. But this is the spot where he loses some time. Now, I want you to watch how Baz gets into Charlotte's Web. He'll line up on the right side of the track, almost diagonalize, almost like try to apex this thing early. Gets down there on the wet, lets it run out a little bit, gets it on the wet part of the track there, and he just doesn't ever really get to a big steep lean angle, and he pulls away quite a lot from the guys that have been behind him in that little section. So it's almost like he's not braking as deep and letting the bike run a little bit more, carrying a little bit more roll speed.
Oh, we saw some spots on the lens there, Jay.
Yeah.
Not sure, maybe it's rain starting to fall in that corner. Now, there's Jake Lewis, Jason. So as this track is drying out, we take a look at Jake Lewis on the Altus Motorsports Suzuki GSX-R 1000. Jake Lewis, what a year. We've talked about it. He was on the couch at the beginning of the season. Nice, svelte 200 pounds. And
I'm sure he loves it. We keep mentioning that.
Well, he mentioned it in his post on Instagram. Yeah. And for Lewis, he was able to wrap up the Stock 1000 Championship, second in a row for Altus. And, yeah, now you can see the rain falling. And for some of the riders out here, Jason, I was going to talk about, with a drying line and these rain tires, riders started to search for a little bit of water to try to keep it cool. But now with the rain falling, at least in part of the track, that's going to be, as weird as it sounds, it's it's kind of a good thing for these racers and to get a little bit more moisture in this track for these rain tires.
Yeah, well, we've seen races where if the sun really peaked out right now and it got to the point where the sun was beating down on the track, that dry line would become a lot more apparent. Right now, I don't think these guys have anything to worry about with 6 to go. It's going to stay somewhat wet, even though dry lines are appearing. But you're exactly right, Greg. Looking for those damp spots to cool the tires off is definitely a benefit.
And Jason, as Greg mentioned, despite missing out on last season, Jake Lewis has been so consistent all year long, especially this weekend in these mixed conditions. It seems almost like he hasn't put a wheel wrong. I caught up with him just to kind of see where he's at. It's silly season. There's a lot of conversation about what potentially could happen for next year. I said, if you had any choice of what you could do, what would you want to do? And he said, I'd love to be back on a Superbike, but I'm not opposed to coming back and defending my Stock 1000 and Superbike Cup titles.
Well, Hannah, I think that the biggest thing there is that Jake's just so happy to be back in the paddock, and we all love having him back. I think you got to give a huge shout-out to this whole Altus Motorsports team as well, Greg. I mean, they've won back-to-back championships now in that Stock 1000 class. They have a tremendous rider in Cam Peterson, who we've seen now go on and do good things in Superbike. Jake Lewis, who we remember was on a Superbike at one time, got injured, and that's why we got to see Tony Elias come back and race here in America. But Jake Lewis has definitely recommitted himself, been back on the winning ways, and it'd be good to see him back. And how about Ashton Yates, Greg? Another good weekend for Ashton on the Honda. He's running 6th. He still has Lewis within just up the road of him by 2 seconds, 3 seconds?
Yeah. And Ashton Yates is on that Honda CBR 1000 RR SP. And he is doing a great job on that motorcycle. Flying the flag for Honda this year. And Ashton Yates, who was our #1 Stock 1000 finisher yesterday, in 5th spot. And how about this guy, Kyle Wyman, on that One Cure Panera-bred Ducati. He was in 3rd place yesterday, though, Jason, then had a get-off. And Kyle Wyman is, from what I heard, is not 100%. He's bruised up a little bit. Yeah, bruised up in some spots that we don't want to probably be bruised up into. So, that definitely hurts. And we saw him in the last corner yesterday. So, really happy to see Kyle up and going. We see Bobby Fong a little bit better than yesterday for Bobby as well. Got Kyle Wyman just in front of him there for Bobby Fong. Fastest lap of the race. It's a couple seconds off what the fast guys up at the front are doing. But for this guy, it's all about just getting that confidence going in these conditions.
Well, Jason, for Kyle being unable to finish yesterday's race, it put him much farther back on the grid than he hoped to be, so he recognizes that this race sets the grid for this afternoon. He was looking to get ahead early, but he said if he wasn't able to, then just to be patient and let it come. As far as the bike goes, they made no changes at all. It was working pretty well yesterday. Gearing is good. Electronics were solid. So he thinks he has the pace. It's just a matter of being safe in the beginning and really trying to work his way through the pack here.
Yeah, he got a great start today, Hannah, and put himself up there pretty quickly. So now it's just getting these laps in. And boy, Greg, it would sure be nice if we had a dry race later on. But these guys have seen all these conditions just so different from Friday to now. Looks like we might have a red flag on track. Yeah, I saw the lights just go off in front of our booth here. So not sure what that's for. We've got 5 laps to go. So 12. Completed. It's wildlife on the track. Oh, man. So we're not sure what wildlife, but that's probably what we're told. Deer, yeah. It could be. I know I can see geese in the area as well. But wildlife on the track has slowed things down in this one. So red flag out, and that's going to stop racing. And now MotoAmerica has a decision to make. There are rules in place that say percentage of the race complete. The race is complete. But, at this point, Jay, with a 17-lap race, or do we have 12 in the books or not? That's the question. Or was it 11 completed laps by the rest of the field? So the decision has been made, and now the race is complete. And that means that Matthew Skults is going to take his 2nd victory of the season. Uncontested Matthew Skults after the first lap or 2. And he's going to wrap it up. Loris Baz is going to finish in 2nd place. And Jake Gagne will hold on to 3rd. Cameron Peterson, 4th. Jake Lewis in 5th spot over Ashton Yates. Well, I tell you, I can't be happier for this guy. Matthew Skults has deserved another win this year. Yesterday, what? I mean, yeah. And, right? And he told me, he says, Jay, I just want to get back out there tomorrow, try to win a race for these guys. And he's just kind of finding out now that he's won this race. And you could look at his race pace, Greg, 38s, really consistent 38s, and just grinding out those laps. To be honest, it looked like he was just controlling this race. Once he got to that 6-second lead, he was just controlling it, doing a little goon riding now. Goon ride. Yep, he's going to be happy. And I can tell you, Chuck Giacchetto and that whole Westby team are going to be super pumped for him. Dominated this race. Yeah, he did.
He really did. Once he got out front and got clear of Cameron Peterson, he put his head down, and what a run. For the South African who lives in Georgia, I think about 2 hours away from here. Matthew Skoltz with his second win. Keep in mind, he won the first race of the season when Jake Gagne's engine expired, and he was the best rider behind Gagne at the moment. It was early on in that race.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
And so really, this whole Southeast thing has proven really good for the Westby team. Of course, Road Atlanta might be their home race, and Barber is a close second. A deer came popping across the track, and MotoAmerica and Race Control did the right thing. Anybody coming through that corner, Jay, you just never can predict what's going to happen with a deer either. They could have turned and burned and tried to set a lap time.
Do you remember when Rocco almost hit deer last year? 2 deer jumped out in front of him in, I believe, warm-up for Junior Cup last year. Here's the results, Greg. Matthew Skoltz, 7.5-second win over Loris Baz. Gagne, third. Think he'll know where to go? I don't third.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure.
Down there. Cam Peterson, fourth. Jake Lewis, Yates, Kyle Wyman, Bobby Fong, and Hector Barber are going to run out your top 9, 10th place. Look a little bit further back. So
I correct Matthew Skoltz, okay, but I don't think today the battling of Baz and Gagne and Peterson helped his cause of winning this race.
It wouldn't have mattered.
He was so fast.
And now Jake just heard him say the only time we can beat him is. So now Gagne is going to go back with Stamboli and try to come up with a better package for the second race.
He's in a lot more pain than he shows, but he always has a smile on his face no matter what happens. It's such a pleasure to have in this paddock.
Yeah, he really is. He's such a good addition to our paddock, Greg, and hopefully we're going to see him back next year. Some of that alcohol tonight will probably make him feel a little bit better as well.
And, yeah, he sees the whole field, doesn't he? He knew what happened to Cameron Peterson in that one, but I kind of like the strategy that Josh Herron had with the slicks. Man, it could have paid off. And you can see that even Baz was and his team were grappling with the idea of putting a rear slick on. So that's how that decision was. It was difficult to make, no question about it.